Hello? What do you mean, hello? Where are you? What's going on? You better stop messing around. The voice of my husband over the phone was trembling. He seemed very angry. What? What's got you so upset? How could I not be upset? Today is our son's graduation. Where the hell are you on our son's graduation day? Our son? I asked back, raising the end of my sentence, to which my husband shouted in frustration. Yes, our son. Everyone else is here with their families for the ceremony. It's just me here alone. Isn't it normal for families to attend graduations together? He seemed quite angry, but that doesn't concern me now. I continued without caring. I don't have a family. On the other end of the line, my husband gasped in surprise. Doesn't he realize what he's done these past 13 years? How he's treated me? That's fine by me. Whether he realizes it or not, I'll live my life the way I want. I won't let you have your way anymore. I am Katie, a 40-year-old housewife working part-time. I've been married to my husband Mason, who always says, being a housewife must be nice because it's easy. I'm jealous. For 13 years. I've been hearing this about being a housewife since the beginning of our marriage. But what shouldn't be forgotten is that originally, it was Mason who said, I want you to be a housewife for the kids. Did he forget he said that? It's just so frustrating. Also, once the kids got a bit older, he started saying, housewives are just unemployed parasites, aren't they? He treated me as if I was worthless. Mason's seemingly sarcastic remarks about me increased as the children grew. It got so bad that I started working part-time a few years ago, but then he mocked. It's just part-time, after all. Treating me the same. Time flies, and now our eldest, Richard, is 18, and Sean, the younger, is 15. I say our, but I share no blood with these two. They are my stepchildren. When I married Mason, the kids were 5 and 2 years old. Time has flown, but it hasn't been easy getting here. I've been told having kids might be difficult for me. When Mason asked me out, I nervously told him this. I've had irregular periods since I was young, and the doctor told me. You won't have trouble living a normal life, but having children might not be possible. So, when I found out Mason had stepchildren, I was honestly happy. These kids have had a hard time because of my bad taste in women. Mason confessed with a guilty look after we decided to get married. The reason for his divorce from his previous wife was apparently her affair. Hearing that, I did my best to encourage Mason. It's not your fault. We'll be fine with the kids. Let's raise them carefully together so they won't feel lonely. Katie, thank you. Mason's income is, to put it kindly, not high. I really wanted to work full-time too, to help support our family. But after hearing that, it wasn't possible. I think it's very important for the kids to have a mom at home. So, I want you to be a housewife and provide them with a sense of security. All right, I understand. Managing on just Mason's income was extremely difficult. We revisited our expenses numerous times, cutting wherever we could. Entertainment, beauty expenses, and I even tried not to buy any new clothes. But I couldn't let the children feel any inconvenience. If anything had to be cut, it would be from my share. I truly believed that. At first, I think Mason was grateful, saying, I feel bad for making you struggle, thank you. But at some point, Mason started to look down on me. You're not particularly beautiful or young, so why don't you try to improve yourself? It's embarrassing. I do wear makeup. I take care of myself as much as I can. but I don't have as much money or time as before we were married. It hurts when you say things like that. It was different from when I was single and only had to think about myself. As I spent more time and money on the children, the time and money I could spend on myself decreased. And housework? Mason used work as an excuse and didn't do any of it. I asked for help a few times, but he refused every time. I have you handle it because I trust you. Besides, the kitchen is a woman's kingdom, he'd say, as if I asked to be left alone with all the responsibility. The man I thought was manly and wonderful before we got married had turned into just a henpecked husband. The only solace was the children. Right after we got married, the kids were 5 and 2. Maybe if they had been younger, they wouldn't have been so shy, but Richard, in particular, had a strong rejection towards me. I want Mom. You're not my mom. Richard. I was close to tears myself as I hugged the crying Richard. But little by little, it seemed they began to open their hearts to me. However, an unexpected hindrance began to appear. And that was Mason. He should have been the biggest supporter, but I never thought someone so close could become an enemy. Probably, Mason couldn't stand that the children were closer to me than to him. Katie, you've gotten fat, haven't you, that sloppy body? It's proof you can't manage yourself. Don't you kids ever become like that? It's good you're not related by blood. He criticized my body shape and then went on to thoroughly criticize my appearance as well. People are done for when they stop caring about their appearance. Since Katie is unemployed, she probably loses all sense of beauty because she doesn't meet people. You kids be careful not to become like that, you hear? Faced with such remarks, I couldn't stay silent. Can I say something? It's fine if you think that or tell me directly, but please stop belittling me in front of the kids. I was concerned not just about my feelings, but the possibility of the kids picking up Mason's way of speaking. That was the last thing I wanted. Children who are still growing absorb everything around them, good or bad. Mason, their dad, gleefully looking down on me, their stepmom, was not something I wanted to show them. What's that supposed to mean? You're just upset because you're being told the truth. Don't use the kids as an excuse. Yes, it's incredibly unpleasant to be told that. But more than that, I'm really concerned about the children's futures. Shut up. Don't blame others. What I'm saying isn't bad-mouthing, it's just the truth. It's ridiculous to say you can't speak the truth. Despite calmly explaining my reasons, Mason became enraged and refused to listen from that point on. Instead, his bad-mouthing of me escalated. Furthermore, whenever I corrected the children's manners, Mason would almost always interject. Ah. Richard. Look here, you still have food in your mouth. Let's swallow before we talk. It happened when I casually pointed out that Richard was talking with his mouth full during a meal. From beside me, a loud sigh, followed by Mason grumbling unhappily. Unemployed and without any income, yet you always act so high and mighty with your nagging. It was the usual pattern. Mason looked to Richard and Sean, tilting his head as if seeking their agreement. It's not nagging. It's just correcting their manners so they don't face issues in the future. You're going out of your way for kids that aren't even yours. I felt a surge of anger. How could he say such a thing in front of young children? I was at a loss for words. Feeling pathetic. From that day on, I avoided clashing with Mason and started to watch his mood. I didn't want the children to witness any arguments between Mason and me. Mason was easy to read. If I praised him, he would be in a good mood. I knew it was the wrong approach, but I couldn't think of anything else. Divorce seemed like the easiest solution, But what would happen to Richard and Sean? I couldn't abandon them. So, making life as peaceful as possible was my top priority. Before I knew it, 13 years had passed, and here we are. The once young brothers have been thoroughly influenced by Mason. Their appearance aside, their way of thinking has become just like Mason's. Seeing Mason mock me in front of them, they've come to think it's normal to belittle me. They started to belittle me as if it was nothing. "Hey, wait a minute!" Richard called out to me, and when I turned around, he frowned and said, "My friends are coming over tomorrow. Can you go somewhere? You know, it would be embarrassing if they saw you. If you were younger and prettier, we wouldn't have to deal with this hassle." What a pain! I understand. This wasn't just adolescent embarrassment speaking. I could tell he genuinely felt ashamed of me. Such remarks had become repetitive, and I had grown accustomed to being hurt. "Oh, and leave some money before you go out. Did you iron the clothes I asked for? Ah, and the deadline for my college application forms is coming up. Take care of it." Despite claiming to be embarrassed by me, he had no qualms about asking for favors. This behavior seemed inherited from Mason. Sean chimed in from the side as well. "Hey, did you check on my tutoring? Oh, and there's a club carpool tomorrow. Thanks in advance." Richard and Sean returned to their rooms without waiting for my reply. To them, my fulfilling their requests was taken for granted, without a trace of gratitude. It's as if the concept didn't even occur to them. At dinner, the root of all problems, Mason looked at me skeptically and broached a subject. "You should start earning some money soon." "Excuse me?" Mason sighed dramatically, letting his shoulders slump as if to show me. "Do you realize how much I've been supporting you? I've been lenient until now, but how many years has it been since you were unemployed? Have you given it any thought?" I felt sick at his words and put down my fork. "I'm not unemployed. I've been working part-time since Sean was in elementary school." That's right. I was a housewife when the kids were younger, feeling sorry for them. But once Sean started school, I began working part-time in the mornings on weekdays. Despite starting part-time work, Sean frequently fell ill, and I often had to ask off work to care for him. When I had to take a whole week off, I desperately asked Mason, "Just for one day, or even half a day. Can't you look after Sean?" I thought he would understand since I'd been the one staying home. But his response was dismissively irresponsible. "What? Impossible. I'm busy with work. You should know that's not feasible. Why should I anyway?" I'm busy with work. This means that to Mason, my part-time job wasn't considered real work. I had understood his low regard for my part-time work, but being treated as unemployed was intolerable. "I earn around $800 a month, though I do work within the limits that qualify for tax and Social Security benefits." My defense against the unemployment accusation led not only Mason but also Richard and Sean to snicker derisively. $800, wow. That's embarrassingly low. "Yeah, exactly. How can you even brag about that? You've got some nerve." At their words, Mason snorted triumphantly, puffing his nostrils as if proud. "Exactly what the boys said. Now that they don't need much from us, you should contribute more around here. You're the only one not related by blood. You won't be recognized as family like this." Watching the three of them laughing loudly together, something inside me, that I had been holding together, started to crumble. I can't do this anymore. If this continues, I'll break. For my own sake, I can no longer push myself. Once I fulfill my last obligation, I'll leave this house. On this day, I firmly vowed. Sean's middle school graduation is tomorrow, huh? It's comforting to think he's graduating from middle school. A few months after I made up my mind. Richard had been accepted into university, and Sean was about to have his middle school graduation ceremony the next day. At night, after the children went back to their rooms, Mason, in a good mood, was drinking behind me as I washed the dishes. Man, to be honest, before marrying you, I was really struggling, wondering what to do. Mason, slightly drunk and in a good mood, began to talk incessantly. When Mom, who was looking after Richard and Sean, said she couldn't take care of them anymore, I was considering putting them into some facility. But then I luckily got married to you at just the right time. I really am lucky, huh? I had vaguely heard about this from Mary, my mother-in-law, shortly after we got married. Mason had taken custody of the children, but he mostly left their care to Mary. It must have been physically tough for the nearly 60-year-old Mary to take care of two young children. Eventually, Mary couldn't handle taking care of the two children and told Mason to take responsibility. That's when our marriage was conveniently decided. Really. From the beginning to the end, I was just a convenient woman for you. I'm amazed at myself. Ah? What's that? Are you sulking? Don't start with that annoying talk. Once both of them get jobs, we could go on a trip or something? That should satisfy you, right? I deliberately made noise with the dishes, pretending not to hear, and ignored Mason's talk. After finishing the dishes, I sat opposite Mason and just kept pouring him drinks. Here, drink up. Tomorrow is Sean's big graduation day, after all. Hey! That's right. You can be thoughtful sometimes, huh? Mason, delighted, turned red in the face, drinking glass after glass. In the end, there were so many bottles and cans of alcohol that I had no idea how much he had drunk. The next day, I was on the train, feeling refreshed. I wonder if the graduation ceremony has started by now. I murmured to myself and gazed out of the train window, enjoying the moment. When was the last time I felt this peaceful? Glancing at my mobile phone, which was on silent mode, I saw a massive number of missed calls. Checking them, most were from Mason. There were also a few from Richard. From the look of these missed calls, they must have been in a panic this morning. Normally, Richard and Sean are morning people. Even if I don't wake them, they would come downstairs on time. So, by morning, one of them should have woken up Mason, who was asleep at the table. I had also left several alarm clocks around Mason out of mercy. So, I don't think they were late for the graduation ceremony because they overslept. Well, the problem starts from there, doesn't it? I left behind the suit, tie, socks, and everything else Mason was supposed to wear for the graduation ceremony in the closet and left the house. To show mercy, they were all cleaned or freshly laundered. Normally, that should be enough for anyone to get ready on their own. But Mason isn't normal. For the past 13 years, he has relied entirely on me for care. He probably wouldn't even know which suit was appropriate for the graduation or which one to wear. You'd normally prepare the day before, wouldn't you? Certainly, or rather, without a doubt, Mason wouldn't do that. Even drunk or passed out, he knew I was there to deal with the aftermath. What must they have thought when the person they relied on suddenly disappeared completely? I'm curious about their reactions. Were they confused? Maybe they were furious. Either way, it doesn't concern me now. After a while, as the train arrived at my destination, I disembarked with my luggage. Passing through the gates, I turned off my phone's silent mode, and immediately it started to ring. It was Mason. Hello? What do you mean, hello? Where are you? What's going on? You better stop messing around. Mason's voice through the phone was trembling. What? What's got you so upset? How could I not be upset? It's Sean's graduation today. Where the hell are you on our son's graduation day? Our son? I repeated, with a rise at the end, prompting Mason to shout in frustration. Sean! Everyone else is here with their families for the ceremony. It's just me here alone. Isn't it normal for families to attend graduations together? And you didn't even prepare the clothes. If Mom hadn't come, it would have been a disaster. Facing such misdirected anger and unfair victimization, I replied calmly. I think it's your way of thinking that's really problematic to rely on your mom without any resistance at your age, and for such a thing. What did you say? Surprised and stumbling over his words. Mason was clearly very angry, but that's irrelevant to me now. I continued, unfazed. And what do you mean by family? What? I'm saying that. I cut off Mason's words and declared. I don't have a family. On the other end, Mason gasped in surprise. I've never felt treated like family by any of you these 13 years. That's not true. What are you talking about? Just by eating together, sleeping, and living together, doesn't that alone make us family? Being regularly belittled about my appearance and physique, sometimes mocked as an unemployed parasite. More than anything, you exploited me like a servant, and now you speak of family? What are you even saying? Aren't you the fool here? After speaking quickly, there was a short silence, then the call ended. A few minutes later, Richard called. The timing was too coincidental. Likely, Mason had conveyed something to Richard. So you fought with Dad? You went too far. Dad was really angry, you know? If you apologize now, Dad will probably forgive you, so just apologize and come back home. Otherwise, dinner will be late. Holding my head in my hands, I was astounded. I wonder how Mason had described our conversation to Richard. But Mason and Richard believe without a doubt that they are not at fault in any way. And at their core, as long as they are okay, that's all that matters to them. That's why Richard made the comment he did. They don't even question why I left the house and abandoned Sean's graduation ceremony. Instead, they're worried about their dinner. Me apologize? Why? And for dinner, you all could just take care of it yourselves. My statement seemed to upset them. Richard's tone grew harsher. What's that supposed to mean? That's irresponsible, just leaving like that. You were being fed and taken care of by Dad. Do you understand that? I've thought this for a while now, but you should be more grateful. Mason's words come to mind. Who do you think you're living off of? I've heard that line many times. Mason's mantra has seemingly seeped deep into the children as almost a curse. It's egregiously outdated. Do they understand that this attitude will lead them to struggle in the future? I let out a small sigh and told Richard. You and Sean really are just like Mason. Huh? What's that out of nowhere? Of course we are, we're family. Yes, well, you might want to be careful then. You're not suited for modern marriage. Richard let out a weakened. What? Again. Just like Mason, he lacks self-awareness. What? Just because you're upset, you're spouting nonsense? The similarity extends to their voices trembling when upset. Anyway, I have other things I want to discuss, so I'll be making a final visit soon. Could you tell that to Mason? Wait, a final visit? What do you mean? Wait, hey. I can't wait. Goodbye. After hanging up, the phone kept ringing persistently, but I decided to completely ignore it until it eventually stopped. A month later, I was visiting Mason's house for one last settlement. As I rang the doorbell, Mason appeared with heavy footsteps. "Katie, you came back. I knew you'd come back. I believed in you." Mason, whom I hadn't seen for a month, looked somewhat haggard. Perhaps it was due to his disheveled appearance. His clothes were wrinkled and dirty, and his complexion wasn't good. Above all, he exuded an air of utter exhaustion, completely lacking in energy. As he approached me, Mason tried to grab my shoulders in desperation, but I quickly shrugged him off. "Don't touch me, please. We're not family or anything anymore." "What? What are you saying, Katie? We're just separated for a cool down, aren't we?" "No one ever said that. Mason made that up, conveniently for himself. It's almost impressive how he comes up with such convenient notions." "I was so happy thinking you had finally come back." "That's not it at all. Quite the opposite. I came here today to completely settle things with you." "Settle?" Mason asks me back with a strained smile. I nodded firmly. "I want a divorce. Let's thoroughly discuss alimony and the division of assets in the divorce proceedings." Entering the living room, it was empty. No sign of Richard or Sean, who should have been off today. "Where are the kids?" "They're each in their rooms. They shouldn't know you're coming. Do you want me to call them now?" "That's fine. It's not like we're having a pleasant chat. What's about to start is a divorce discussion. No need to let the kids hear that." Yet, I wonder how in just 1 month of being away, the house has changed so drastically. Clothes were strewn about everywhere, and the table was littered with finished plates and plastic bags. The sink was so overloaded it was impossible to tell what was underneath. Doing dishes here would be impossible. Looking across the dirty room, I avoided the items on a chair and sat down. "Shall we begin?" I wanted to settle this as quickly as possible. As I sat down and approached the table, Mason suddenly bowed deeply with incredible speed. "Stop it. That won't work on me, and it doesn't change how I feel." Mason kept his head down, shaking it. "Please, somehow spare me from the divorce. In this month, we realized how important you really are." Mason raised his voice. The old me might have been persuaded by this alone. But over the years, I've grown stronger. Such child's play won't work on me. Right, once the slave was gone, there were no more domestic workers to help in this house. "Domestic worker?" Mason averted his gaze. I smiled back at him cheerfully. "The housework you've always mocked. It was tough, wasn't it? Full of tedious and bothersome tasks. I thought you and your clumsy, impatient selves would never manage." "What?" Mason glared at me sharply. Excitedly, his nostrils flared as usual. "Getting all high and mighty just because I'm being humble. We could do housework if we weren't working. It's just because we're busy with jobs. You wouldn't understand, you only worked part-time." "Right, I don't understand. Especially not the troubles of someone who remarried, pushed his children onto his spouse, and cheated with another woman." "Huh?" Mason's face, which had been red with rage just moments before, suddenly drained of color, turning pale. "Cheated? What are you talking about?" "You thought it wasn't obvious?" "I knew everything." Mason's lips tremble as he continues. "If you knew, why act normal all this time, and now divorce?" "It was all for the kids. Ever since the doctor told me, I believed I couldn't have children. Marrying Mason allowed me to become a mom to Richard and Sean. Mason's cheating, his verbal abuse, the kids' mocking behavior. I can't count how many times I thought about divorcing and giving up. Yet, I endured because I loved the two young ones. So, I decided to persevere until at least Sean graduated from middle school. No. You're lying. Turning towards the voices, I see Richard and Sean, frozen in shock. Their faces paler than Mason's. Mom, I don't want anything from you. I don't expect apologies. Instead, from now on, I won't be around. There won't be anyone to help you for free. Richard and Sean awkwardly closed their mouths. I turned back to Mason. You're still cheating, aren't you? Well. His hesitation to deny it amounts to an admission. If you agree to divorce now, I won't demand alimony from her in court. Otherwise, I'm ready to confront her and even visit your workplace. What'll it be? Which do you prefer? Mason ponders deeply, sweat beading on his forehead and dripping down his cheeks. Are you really not coming back? His eyes, looking up at me, are brimming with tears. No. Absolutely not. She can't do any housework. She doesn't work either. Marrying her, there's no benefit. Mason pleads in panic. His thinking is flawed, and he seems unable to realize it. What benefit? It's time you learned. You shouldn't seek benefits in family. Tell me, what have you given me? All I remember is suffering. I'm sorry. Don't demand from others what you lack yourself. My years of resentment might have poured into those words. Mason screams and agrees to the divorce. Signing the divorce papers I brought without argument. The divorce was finalized smoothly. The alimony was agreed to be paid in installments. After the divorce, it seems his mistress quickly dumped him. He was attractive because he belonged to someone else. Once divorced, he's just a single old man. Even Mason, usually so confident, was notably downtrodden by this. Being called unattractive and without merit by both his ex-wife and mistress was a severe blow. Though it's just the truth, he can't seem to accept it. This shock has led to continuous mistakes at work. The kids seem to have changed somewhat. Especially Richard, who's desperately trying to change. The reason being, his first ever girlfriend dumped him, saying she didn't want a boyfriend so outdated. While I have no intention of getting involved anymore, I hope they can change if possible. But given their current state, it'll be a tough challenge. I've started a new life near my hometown. For the first time since before my marriage, I'm living alone. Taking this as an opportunity, I quit my previous part-time job and started looking for full-time work near my new home. It might be challenging given my age, but living alone on a part-time income is too idle. I've been overworked, but being idle doesn't suit me. If I can't find full-time work, maybe I'll consider juggling part-time jobs. Or perhaps I'll find a new hobby. That's what I'm thinking about these days. Risa, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff into our house. What? What do you mean by that? While I was on a trip, my husband Polly had moved his parents' moving boxes into our house without asking. And on top of that, I received unbelievable treatment from Polly. You should not come back anymore. Polly doesn't want me to come back home anymore. Even though this house is where our family has always lived, Polly wants to kick me out and live with his parents. However, I had anticipated being kicked out by Polly and easily retorted, "Okay. I'll move out on my own." I sought advice from my dad, Mike, and took a certain action. First, I sent an email to someone and made a plan. I returned to America with Mike. And then, I came back to our house. I started to execute the plan as intended. Polly, who had been naively thinking he could live with his parents, was surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Actually, the plan I had made with Mike was: my name is Risa. I am a 45-year-old dietitian working in a hospital. Originally, I was supposed to follow in Mike's footsteps, but inheriting my mom's love for cooking, I became a dietitian. However, my beloved mom passed away before I graduated from college. After that, Mike started working in France, so we sold the house I was born and raised in, and I started living alone in an apartment. Being plain-looking since childhood, I've always been inconspicuous wherever I go. Moreover, attending girls' schools from middle school to university, I had no encounters with men, and I had never had a boyfriend. However, I was fortunate to meet good people wherever I went, and after graduating from college, I got married. At that friend's wedding, I met my current husband, Polly, who was 3 years older than me and a friend of the groom. He seemed like the type who would be popular with the ladies. Luckily, or perhaps coincidentally, he had just broken up with his girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend was a nurse, and it seems they broke up due to misaligned schedules and night shifts. When I mentioned that I was a dietitian with early mornings and few holidays, he was very pleased. However, at that time, I was busy studying for the national exam for registered dietitians, so I was busy on weekends. Even so, he was kind enough to send me messages, saying, "I miss not being able to see you, but good luck with your studies." Feeling a sense of destiny with him, I thought I'd like to marry him if I passed. And on the day of the exam results, he invited me out to celebrate my passing that night. Congratulations on passing! This is how I feel, would you accept it? What he handed me was an engagement ring. He proposed to me right then and there. Overjoyed as if my passing was his own, I tearfully said yes right away. And so, our married life began. At first, we thought about living in an apartment, but with Mike's help, we bought our own home. I was looking forward to a happy life from now on, but after getting married, I started to feel a sense of discomfort around Polly. Thinking it was because I had no experience with men, I assumed it would be okay once I got used to it. However, one day, when Polly was looking at my pay stub, he made a comment that made me do a double take. "What's this?" I thought dietitians, being professionals, would earn more. I'm disappointed. What? Well, I just started working, and we're both working, so an income of around $200,000 should be fine, right? I retorted, feeling somewhat offended. It's not like I got married to be supported by my husband, but being told my salary was low didn't feel good. Yet, Polly went on to insult my earnings further. I've been totally deceived. If I knew the income was this low, I would have asked before getting married. A nurse would have earned more. Polly must have been talking about his ex-girlfriend. It's one thing to complain about my earnings, but comparing me to his ex-girlfriend is unforgivable. Indeed, nurses receive night shift allowances and holiday pay. In comparison, my salary is lower because I have fewer early mornings and holiday shifts. However, I have my own side of the story to tell. I happened to see Polly's pay stub the other day, and it turns out he earns even less than I do. Yet, I thought we wouldn't struggle with our combined incomes, so I didn't say anything. I tried to gently break it to Polly, not wanting to hurt his pride. "Well, it seems like you have it tough too, so I guess you were hoping for a bit more from my salary. Sorry for not meeting your expectations." That's right. I work for a small company, and my salary is really low, so I wanted to marry a professional woman to achieve financial stability. I only meant to cheer him up with what I didn't even believe myself, but I never thought Polly would take it seriously. Before we got married, he was happy that my work hours were regular, but after we got married, he complained about my low income as if he had changed his stance. What kind of world does a man live in where he expects his wife's income to be higher than his? I was just dumbfounded by Polly's unreliable behavior. As soon as he knew about my income, Polly started looking down on me. Yet, he wouldn't hesitate to buy whatever he wanted without restraint. Even when I asked him to be a bit more frugal, he wouldn't listen at all. I've been spoiled by my parents since I was a kid, buying me whatever I wanted, so I can't change my attitude towards money that easily. I couldn't say anything back to such a spoiled statement from Polly. It's no excuse to say that he was spoiled by his parents when he was a child at his age. The following year after we got married, we were blessed with a boy. I hoped that becoming a parent would change Polly, but his habit of spending recklessly didn't improve, even during childcare. It was always the same with him, spending his entire salary. If it wasn't enough, he'd sneak money from my wallet without me noticing. While I was struggling to manage work and budgeting while raising our son, Cedric, Polly hardly contributed to childcare. As time passed, struggling through these tough days, Cedric is now preparing for his college entrance exams this year. Thanks to my careful budgeting, it looks like we can afford to send him to college. Cedric, understanding our financial situation, has been studying hard to enter a national university. Yet, Polly came up with a ridiculous idea. Because I bought a new car last year, the loan repayments are tough. Plus, there's Cedric's exams, right? So, I've decided to sell my parents' house and have them move in with us. Wait, what are you saying? Suddenly living together like that, it's going to be a problem. Why? Risa, you get along with my parents, right? If we live together, we'll get their pension and become wealthier. Indeed, I don't hate the idea of living with my in-laws. It's just that I didn't like Polly's way of making decisions on his own. In terms of finances, we've been managing well so far, so there shouldn't be a problem as long as we don't indulge in luxuries. Why do you always decide everything selfishly? Even the new car, you bought it without consulting me. That's my car, so I don't need to consult you every time. Seeing Polly's selfish behavior, this time, Cedric got furious. Dad, enough is enough. When I go to college, I might come home late from part-time jobs or clubs. If grandparents Arnold and Rothy are living with us, it's going to be awkward, right? Why don't you discuss these things properly with Mom? Cedric, coming out of his room all of a sudden and raising his voice, left Polly wide-eyed in surprise. But the next moment, Polly turned to me, lashing out as if he was taking it out on me. Cedric talking back to me, his dad, like that is because of your poor parenting. Reflect on it. Saying that, Polly locked himself in his room and didn't come out for a while. I was happy that Cedric stood up for me. However, I was worried that the current home environment would affect his exam preparations. Despite my worries, Cedric successfully passed his first-choice national university. But tired of living with Polly, Cedric decided to move out and start living on his own. He said he wants to try his best on his own without relying on his parents, even if it means working part-time. Even so, Polly continues to ignore both me and Cedric. Ever since it's been just Polly and me at home, we don't even talk though we're in the same house. It feels suffocating. During these days, feeling mentally drained, I called my dad Mike in France to seek advice. Mike, worried about me, suggested I come to France for a while. I thought I couldn't take a long break because of my job, but it seems my colleagues were worried about my pale complexion recently. After explaining the situation, I was allowed to take some time off. However, I wanted to keep my consultation with Mike a secret from Polly. So, I told him I was invited on a trip by a friend. I hoped that if I was away for a while, Polly might cool down a bit. But heading to Mike's, an entirely unexpected situation unfolded. Starting with a call from Polly while I was in France. Risa, I've moved my parents' stuff into our house while you were away. What? What do you mean? What do you mean, what? I've been saying, haven't I? That I'd live with my parents. More than that, Dad and Mom are angry with you. They said a wife who spoils their son like you is the worst. No way. I couldn't believe what Polly was saying. My in-laws shouldn't be the type to speak ill of me like that. So, I've decided we'll live with my parents and me from now on. If you were here, it'd inconvenience my parents. After all, you're the strict wife who makes their son speak ill of them. Polly must have badmouthed me to my in-laws. Maybe the part about them being angry with me was also a fabrication. Angry, I thought about shouting something back. But, to stay calm, I just said, "I'll call you back later," and hung up. Luckily, Mike was home, so I immediately shared the phone call's content with him. Mike, looking disgruntled, shook his head. Polly, really? Relying on his parents at his age. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand why I have to be the one kicked out. After a long discussion, Mike came up with a suggestion that excited me. I thought this would teach Polly a lesson. First, I contacted someone by email, then called Polly's mobile phone. Polly, talking over the phone won't cut it, so let's discuss this when I get back from my trip. I said this calmly, but Polly, with a laugh in his voice, replied, "You shouldn't come back." Just as Mike advised, Polly didn't want me to return home. Expecting this, I retorted easily, "Okay, got it. I'll just move out on my own." Huh? Polly sounded taken aback by my unexpected response. But thinking I was just bluffing, he laughed and replied, "Move out? Where to, when you have nowhere to go?" "Oh, to the place I'm currently at." "What are you talking about? You're on a trip with friends." "Wait, you're not with a man, are you?" Now he seemed to misunderstand that I was with a lover, so I decided to reveal the truth. "Well, if it's a man, it's indeed a man. But, you know, it's Dad." Mike's place." Polly sounded relieved. But he'd be surprised by the next part of the conversation. "Dad's living in a mansion in France now, so I've decided to live here too. That's why we're going to sell the house we've been living in." "What? What do you mean?" "Well, you should know, right? That house is in Dad's name, built for us. If I'm not living there, it's to be sold." "What? But Dad and Mom are here right now. What are you going to do?" That's what I said. It's no use talking over the phone. Polly, finally grasping the situation, hung up without saying anything else. He can't possibly imagine the further tragedy waiting for him upon my return to America. A week later, I returned home with Mike, where Polly was living with my in-laws. At the entrance, my in-laws greeted us with smiles. "Mike, it's been a long time." "Yes, I can't often return to America due to work. Risa has always been under your care." While Mike and my father-in-law Arnold were exchanging greetings, Polly quietly emerged. It seemed he hadn't yet informed them about the house sale. Looking awkward, Polly just bowed his head. "Polly, the movers are coming today to pick up the stuff. Have you prepared everything?" "All your stuff is already packed." "Oh, it's not just my things that are being moved out." "Huh? Do I have to move my things out today, too?" Polly's surprised shout caught Arnold's attention. "What's going on, Polly? Why are your things being moved out?" Polly, looking guilty, hesitantly explained the situation. Arnold became furious and started yelling at Polly. "You said this house was bought under your name with a loan so we could live together. Making your parents ashamed, unforgivable." Arnold's thunderous voice left Polly speechless. Then, the moving truck arrived. After my things were moved out, my mother-in-law Rothy came out to direct the movers. Thank you for your hard work. Our stuff is prepared here, please take it. Rothy had neatly prepared all the household items, including Polly's. Seeing this, Polly was dumbfounded. Mom? What's happening? Why are you packing Dad's stuff too? Where are you planning to take it? Watching Polly panic and question Rothy, we all burst into laughter. You've been completely fooled. What? What's going on? Why is everyone laughing all of a sudden? Indeed, this was all a plan to trick Polly, discussed in advance by everyone here. The first person I contacted by email from France was Rothy. Rothy had been worried about my tired appearance for some time. After repeatedly asking why, I ended up telling Rothy everything about Polly. Rothy was shocked, especially at the part where Polly blamed his extravagant habits on his parents spoiling him. Rothy tearfully apologized for her parenting in front of me, which made me feel guilty. But Polly's wasteful spending wasn't Rothy's fault. As I comforted Rothy, our bond deepened. For me, without a mom, Rothy became someone I could consult about anything. Mike was aware of my close relationship with Rothy. Thus, he suggested involving the in-laws in our plan. Rothy, without letting Polly know, had been looking for a new place for them to live with Arnold. Arnold's scolding of Polly was all an act. I nearly burst out laughing at their convincing performance. Rothy, thank you for arranging the movers for me as well. Now, I can move to the house Dad built in France. I'm sorry, Risa. My son has caused you so much trouble. Rothy, we agreed not to say that, didn't we? Rothy and I laughed together. Polly, unaware of how close I was with his parents, looked surprised. Mom, where are we moving to? We've already sold our family home. We've already arranged a new place for us. Polly seemed relieved at Rothy's words. But that relief would soon be short-lived. So, it was like that. I worried for nothing. Then I'll just go there too, right? What are you talking about? That's a senior living apartment for Arnold to live in with someone else. Polly, you're not a child anymore. Find your own place to live. As soon as Rothy said this, Polly's face turned pale. That's impossible. I don't even have the money for moving, let alone find a new place. Indeed, Polly had squandered his salary on hobbies and entertainment, leaving him with no savings. No matter how he struggled now, it was his own responsibility. Desperate, Polly looked at me with pleading eyes. I could guess what he was about to say. By the way, Mike built quite a big house in France, right? I had no idea you were such a well-off lady. Listen, I'll do anything you say from now on, so could you take me with you to that house? Suddenly speaking in a sweet tone, he was indeed trying to rely on me. I had no intention of indulging such naive thoughts and firmly stated my position. I've been fooled by your kind words on occasion, but I can't forgive you anymore. You've barely contributed to our living expenses and have just been playing around. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I've already discussed this with Cedric on the phone yesterday, and we've decided to get a divorce. Cedric agrees it's for the best. I vented the feelings I had been holding back, feeling a sense of relief. My in-laws seemed to agree, nodding deeply. What am I supposed to do now? Polly cried, tears in his eyes, but my decision was firm. I presented him with the divorce papers and demanded his signature. Yet, Polly stubbornly refused to sign. Seeing this, Arnold showed his anger again. Polly, enough is enough. After all the trouble you've caused Risa, now you're thinking of relying on her parents' home. I'm ashamed to call you my son. That's right. I admit, I've spoiled you too much. But Polly, you're an adult now. Stop being so selfish and start living on your own." Convinced by his parents' earnest persuasion, Polly shed tears. "What? Even Dad and Mom? Do I have no allies here?" Muttering so, Polly signed the divorce papers. He then arranged to store his belongings in a storage unit and left the house alone. Betrayed by the parents he thought were on his side, he was visibly shocked. However, the in-laws had decided to cut ties with Polly. Not just them. I also promised never to let Polly see Cedric again. This was a strong request from Cedric. He had always resented Polly for never acting like a father. With the divorce as an opportunity, Cedric wanted to sever ties with Polly. I thought it was for the best for Cedric. Rejected by his parents and disowned by his son, Polly must have lost the will to live. Having lost everything, Polly spent some time living in monthly rental hotels and internet cafes. But once he received his salary, he managed to move into an apartment where he could live alone. During the divorce, I gave Polly a small amount of money as part of our shared assets. It was practically nothing, but I wanted to avoid any future claims for money, given my financial situation. In essence, it was severance pay. However, once Polly had a bit of financial leeway, he started getting into partying. Why do I know this? Because Polly contacted me, saying, "I'll find a woman with a good income and make you regret leaving me." Initially, after becoming alone, Polly would contact me just to express his loneliness. But once he had money, his attitude became arrogant again. After some time, the communications from Polly suddenly stopped. I wondered if he had found a new girlfriend, but it turned out the situation was far more serious. According to the former in-laws, Polly had fallen for a nurse he met at a party. Despite not being reciprocated, Polly persistently pursued her. At worst, he even showed up at her apartment. As a result of his relentless stalking, he was reported and arrested in the act. The former in-laws, having intended to sever parental ties, were troubled by their son's scandal, feeling deeply sorry for them. Being a parent is tough. No matter how much you try to distance yourself, you're still responsible when something happens. Despite causing so much trouble for his parents, Polly seemed unrepentant. During the interrogation, "It was true love," he kept insisting. This led to a judgment that he was not remorseful, and his release was delayed. Such a man is better off cooling his head in prison for a while. After all, a penniless man in his 50s chasing such ideals will only cause annoyance. Now, I live elegantly in a mansion in France with Mike. Still not accustomed to the environment and not fluent in French, I'm not working yet. However, I can't stay unemployed forever, so I'm attending French lessons. Once I'm proficient in the language, I plan to help out with Mike's company. As time passed, Cedric graduated from university. He then moved here to work at Mike's company. In fact, Mike had called him over with the intention of making Cedric his successor. It was lonely being apart from Cedric for 4 years, but now we can live together forever. This thought fills me with joy. Now that I've become quite fluent in French, I assist with Mike's company and work as a cooking class instructor locally. Though my marriage failed, my life in France is very fulfilling. Despite being in my mid-40s, this is an ideal environment to enjoy life. I've decided to forget my past self, who worried about being plain and unpopular, and live positively. After all, there's still so much more to come. Surely, Mom in heaven is watching over me.
When I reached my in-laws' house, my husband greeted me with a grin. "The results just arrived, so come on in quickly, ha ha." Wondering what results he was talking about, I followed him into the living room. My husband placed an envelope containing documents on the table. What's this?
It's the DNA test results, haha. This will prove you have had an affair.
With that, my husband smirked and spread the contents of the envelope on the table. My name is Lisa, a 27-year-old housewife. I've been married to Mike for 2 years, and I'm currently pregnant. Not long ago, I experienced intense labor pains and was rushed to the hospital. Though it's been several hours since I was brought to the hospital, I just gave birth. I had our child, who I endured the pain to give birth to. I melted at how cute they were, and I'm so glad they were born safely. Happiness and relief welled up inside me all at once. Once I let myself relax, a wave of intense fatigue hit me. The labor lasted a full day, and I couldn't get any sleep. As a nurse took our baby away to clean them up, I longed for sleep. My husband rushed over after work to be with me during the birth, but he didn't say much after our child was born. At the time, I was too exhausted to notice anything off about him. The nurse returned holding our baby, and then, "Dad, please hold the baby." Saying that, she tried to hold the baby to my husband. But he didn't show any interest in holding the baby and looked at me saying something. Exhausted, I couldn't hear what he was saying at all. Moreover, at that moment, I was getting stitches and I couldn't concentrate on his words. "Huh? What did you say?" I asked once again. But he just left the room without holding our child even once. Wondering what happened, I noticed that the nurse and doctor had uncomfortable expressions on their face. I didn't understand what was going on, but I was so tired that I just fell asleep. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital room and my baby was in the nursery. My husband didn't come to the hospital at all the next day. However, according to the nurse, he was at the hospital and had seen our child. Wondering why he didn't come to my room, I received a shocking message from him.
"After you're discharged, we need to talk about a divorce."
I didn't understand what he meant. Why all of a sudden? I wanted to know the reason, but he didn't reply to any of my messages. I was so shocked that my health didn't improve and my hospital stay became longer. Finally able to go home, I returned to our house. Looking around the room, I noticed that several items of clothing were missing from the closet. I realized that he must have gone back to his parents' house, which made me even more sad. I just got discharged. I sent him a message. Then my husband replied, "This Saturday, let's talk at my parents' house at 1 p.m. That was all he said. What's going on? Did I do something wrong? Feeling frustrated, the day of the meeting arrived. Since the matter was serious, I took my parents with me to my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law, who had experience with childbirth, agreed to look after the baby. When we arrived at my in-laws' house, my husband greeted us with a grin.
"The results just arrived, so hurry up and come in, ha!"
Wondering what he meant by results, I followed him into the living room. He then placed an envelope filled with documents on the table. What's this?
"It's the results of the DNA test, ha!"
Huh?
"Ha! You seem to be panicking."
No, I just don't understand why you do that.
"Well, it doesn't matter. This will prove your infidelity."
Saying that, he smirked and spread the contents of the envelope on the table. There were several documents, but the one summarized that the child was indeed his.
"See? The child and I are..." "Huh?
Why, it's my child.
It's supposed to be someone else's."
I had no idea what was in his mind. He made no sense to me. My in-laws tried to calm him down. All my parents and I could do was watch in disbelief. When he finally calmed down, I asked him a question. What do you want? Why do you do a DNA test? Do you think I was cheating on you?
"Well, when the nurse tried to hand you the baby, you turned pale."
Huh? According to my husband, when the nurse tried to give him the baby, he turned to me and said,
"This baby doesn't look like me. Whose child is it? Are you cheating on me?"
That's what he had apparently said. Huh? You said that back then?
You turned pale at that moment, didn't you?
No. I asked you what? Remember?
You were just pretending because I hit the mark, right?
I was furious at his remark. Do you even realize how difficult my childbirth was? The doctor said I had lost a lot of blood and was anemic. Of course I looked pale in that condition.
So then...
I've told you so many times already, I never cheated on you. When I asked my husband why he thought that, he said he had been researching childbirth online before the birth. He came across the term cuckoldry and became suspicious. There were many stories of wives trying to cuckold or cheat on their husbands. In one post, the husband said to his wife when attending the childbirth, "The baby looks nothing like me," and the wife suddenly panicked. As the post continued, the man secretly did a DNA test and found out the child was not his. The post ended by saying that immediately after giving childbirth, women are exhausted, and it's an ideal time to catch them off guard. So you tested me because of that? Unbelievable.
But the baby didn't look like me at all.
Are you serious? Look at this picture. I showed him a photo of the baby I took with my phone. My in-laws, who were next to my husband, also looked intently at their grandchild's photo. Then my mother-in-law said, "Oh my," and brought out an old photo album. Here, this is a photo of Mike when he was born.
Wow, the baby looks exactly like me. They're identical.
Do you get it now? The baby is truly yours.
I've done something terrible.
My husband hung his head in shame. My in-laws tried to console him. I realized that my feelings for my husband had completely cooled. So, about the divorce and child support.
Huh? No, we don't have to divorce. It's my child after all.
Seriously? You suspect me for no reason and now you're saying this?
I'm really sorry about that. I regret it. Please.
My husband prostrated himself before me. My in-laws, flustered, said, "Lisa, we're truly sorry for our foolish son, but please, could you find it in your heart to forgive him?" However, I said, "Please give me some time to think. Can we live separately for a while?" And I made a promise to set up another discussion later. Actually, there was one thing that bothered me. It was when my husband, grinning, suspected me of cuckolding. He had a smug look on his face even when he was spreading out the DNA test documents. Normally, if a wife had an affair, the husband would be furious. I immediately requested a private detective agency to investigate my husband. In about 2 weeks, I was able to find out about my husband's misdeeds. He was having an affair with a junior colleague at work, and they seemed to have a very intimate relationship. In other words, my husband probably thought that if I had an affair, he could divorce me on my fault, get compensation, and be with his lover. He must have been overjoyed, thinking that if he set a trap, as he saw in the post, I would have a pale face and his plan would work. I immediately contacted my husband and headed to my in-laws' house with the documents.
"You took too long making me wait for 2 weeks.
He said that, but he seemed irritated for some reason. How could he have such an attitude with me? I felt that I wouldn't be satisfied unless I thoroughly punished this guy.
"So, Lisa, have you reconsidered the divorce?"
"I'm sorry to you and the family, but I still want a divorce."
What?
"Why, Mike has been reflecting enough." "Yes, even when you were separated, he was grumbling about how sorry he was to you." "Is that so?" Then, for some reason, my husband got angry.
"It's not fair to make me wait and then just leave me. First of all, can you, a housewife with no income, support our children on your own? You can't live without my income."
How could he be so confident? Even though he had an affair. "Why are you so against the divorce? Don't want to pay child support?"
What are you talking about? I just don't want to be away from my child."
"Lisa, that's a strange accusation. Do you think Mike doesn't care about his child?" As my in-laws began to question my words, I decided to get to the heart of the matter. "Please take a look at these, everyone," I said, and spread out several photos I had taken from an envelope. In them, my husband was entering the apartment of his lover's room together. In other photos, they were entering a love hotel. My in-laws were speechless looking at the photos.
"Is this..."
"Yes, this is evidence of Mike's infidelity." My husband's face turned pale instantly. "So, in short, you were the one deceiving me first.
You probably thought it would be convenient if I had an affair and the child wasn't yours. But since I was completely innocent, you must have panicked. Even if you divorced and got together with your lover, you wouldn't want to pay child support." My husband's face turned paler and paler as if I had hit the nail on the head. "Anyway, I can't go on with you anymore. Please sign this divorce paper. I will request alimony and child support through a lawyer." My husband was reluctant to sign the divorce papers even at this point, but my in-laws urged him to do so. "We are truly sorry. No matter how many times we apologize, we can't make up for it." They apologized to me on their hands and knees. But it wasn't the in-laws who were at fault, it was their idiot son. "Thank you for everything up until now," I said, lifting my in-laws' faces and leaving their house. After that, the divorce went through smoothly, and I claimed alimony for my ex-husband and his lover. I was able to get quite a lot of alimony. And I was also able to claim monthly child support from my ex-husband. My ex-husband and his lover are said to be getting cold stares from their coworkers now. Apparently, my ex-husband had already been spreading rumors at work that I was cheating on him. However, when all was said and done, it was he who was having an affair, so he lost all credibility with his coworkers. By the way, I heard this story from an acquaintance who works at my ex-husband's workplace, so I was able to sue him for defamation and get some compensation for that as well. My ex-husband ended up drowning in debt, lost all his money to have fun with his lover, and was dumped by her. And his lover felt uncomfortable and resigned from the company. My ex-husband, no matter how uncomfortable he feels, has to pay alimony and child support, so he can't quit his job and is in living hell. Well, it's poetic justice, or rather, they got what they deserved. On the other hand, I got a job as an office worker through a friend's introduction, and I'm working hard as a single mother. My newborn son is growing up healthy and adorable. I want to fall in love again, but maybe I'll wait until things settle down a bit. For now, I'll just work hard and earn more money for my child. Thank you for watching until the end. If you liked it, please subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.